Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the eDiscovery Channel. This is Tom O'Connor from lovely downtown, recovering from Hurricane Ida, New Orleans, where we actually feel lucky to be in as good a shape as we are compared to the rest of the of Southeast Louisiana outside of New Orleans, which is still devastated. Rachi, coming to us from Tel Aviv, as always.
I'm over here in Tel Aviv. Yep.
Ducking and weaving the Israeli Secret Service still?
Still trying to avoid them as much as I can. So
Ian, we kid him every week because the latest prime minister of Israel lives just down the street from Rachi, so his street is awash with security. At least that's his story. I don't know.
And just to make things fun, he decided not to move to like the Israeli White House.
Right.
So it's actually living a couple doors down, and so it's good times over here. So this week the excitement was they cut off all our power and internet for like 6 hours. We don't know what they were doing, but yeah, they might be listening to this call. So
went to DEFCON 1, or they were installing a new cloud in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah, something like that. So all good.
Well, we are really pleased to have with us today a person I've known for more years than I will admit to. Both of us had bright red hair when we met. This is Ian Campbell, who is the founder, CEO, chief cook, and bottle washer of iCONECT. Is there anything at iCONECT you don't do, Ian?
Yeah, I certainly don't code, and we have really smart people for that. But I have lots of ideas. I'm always thrown into the ring.
There you go. You're the idea guy. Just keep thinking, Butch. That's what you're good at, right?
That's right.
So before we start with the formal questions, I got to ask. A lot of people in their office have like trophies and awards and certificates and diplomas. Can you tell us what those things are up on the shelf behind you?
I recognize one of them.
I think one of them's a Knob Creek bourbon. We're saving that for. Yeah, I think we're saving that for a special day. I will actually. I'm going to grab my camera for a second and move over here and show you that that's actually on my wall, which is 4 pictures of the Twin Towers, and
Wow.
And that was actually from a calendar that I purchased. I guess over 20 years ago, and when I found it, it was a little outdated. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to put that up to show me that things can change any day, and we're all blessed to be here, and so people ask, why have you got 4 pictures of the Twin Towers on your wall? And it's a constant reminder to me to be very thankful for where I'm at and what I'm doing. So.
Rocky, you notice how he deftly dodged answering the question? You should have been a politician. You sound like the president at a press conference. I'm just looking to segue over to like, never mind the million.
I got to see what else is back up there. Oh, you know what? There's actually, hang on, I'll show you what else is here.
Bobblehead. Okay.
Soccer player. Is that you?
Certainly.
That's actually an Ian bobblehead that I got, and I'll show you kind of. It's actually not bad.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's actually not bad.
I like it.
So,
but yeah, I actually own a soccer club, so I've got lots and lots of soccer memorabilia in and around my office, in and around my house. So.
We were talking before we went live. Your club is. I noticed you said soccer and not football, so it's not to confuse our U.S. listeners, right?
Right. That's right.
He knows how to talk to the general population.
That's right. Your club is Tottenham, you said?
Yeah. In EPL, yeah, I certainly follow Tottenham. Been to a few games there, as I've mentioned with Graham Smith, formerly of Live Note, now with Opus 2. So it's we've always had fun at those games, and and again, we'll see how they make out this year. They've had a great run at the beginning, and then they had a hard weekend. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, as I said also earlier, you deserve a special certificate on the wall up there for surviving an evening with Graham Smith.
Touche.
Yeah, but I think we need to avoid talking about any sports in this one because we're coming off a rough NFL weekend for
not for the New Orleans Saints. We came off a very good weekend. Thank you. This will all change next week. You know,
exactly.
They've even added a game this year just to prolong our misery. You know, God. So Ian, here's the thing: as Rocky said, we like to, you know, kind of let people get a sense of who some of the folks in the profession are. Tell us how you got started in this crazy business. I mean, I mentioned you're Canadian. You're coming to us from Toronto?
Yeah, just outside Toronto. Yeah, and it's going to be hot today. It's going to be like, I don't know, 85, 86, something like that. But hot for us. But lots and lots of thunderstorms. Last couple weeks been.
Right.
I think we're getting the remnants of what you've been dealing with down there. So
yeah. So how did you get into our wacky business?
Yeah, because how long have you been at iCONECT? I guess
I started a company called Interlaw in 1999. iCONECT sold its first system in March of 2000, right after Legal Tech. We demoed it a couple of times at Legal Tech in 2000, and it went from there. But I'd been sort of involved in, I was a concordance trainer, was a live note trainer. I got to travel the world. I've been doing those things in the late 90s. But how I kind of got into it was I was doing live note training. I have an advertising background. I'm an industrial design engineer. So I've always been in and around lots of graphics and lots of workflows and making things comfortable for people. And I was working on concordance training for a client, and in Toronto, actually. And it was a Red Cross case. And they said, well, how do we get to this information from 18 different locations across the country? Because we got all this data in Toronto, but we need to get to it from Vancouver and Montreal. And I said, I don't know, leave it with me. And my brother was a C++ programmer. And they had just built a highway in Toronto where they scanned your license plates. And he was working on that project full time, but part time. I said, hey, can you give me a hand with this? Is there a way to layer the internet on top of the database? And at the time, Concordance, some of your listeners may remember, had a DLL, and we licensed the DLL and we started playing with it, and we effectively built a web front end for Concordance. So this was in late '99, and I took it to the ownership group at Dataflight Software in California, and got them on the phone, showed it to them, and said, do you think this is, of interest to you? And they said, you know what, it's not really our sweet spot. This whole internet thing's pretty new, but if you want to do it, you go ahead.
Yeah, that's not going to go.
So we did, and it went from there. And at the time, one of the people at Dataflight, Cindy Williams, she joined me because she had a really strong relationship with. She had a great relationship with all of sort of the vendors, and we went on our bike to go and talk to anybody who had a copy of Concordance. And so we continued that till around 2003, 2004. At that point, we flipped over into Oracle as a backend because Oracle had a very strong search engine, and we were getting more and more requests from corporate clients saying, can I run it against my own data instead of just my litigation data? And so we built a layer which allowed iCONECT then to be a web front end for Oracle. That changed over to SQL in 2008. And it just continued from there. I mean, and I've always been very much of the evangelist and the idea guy. I've got reams and reams of paper sitting in my office of sketches and ideas and ways to kind of look over the horizon. Some of them fly, some of them don't. They always say that if you've got ideas, either run with them or kill them early. And right. And so we do that. We've got a whole kind of vetting process that when we have a good idea for a feature or an enhancement to the platform, we run it through a bit of a screening, and a lot of the ideas never make it their way into code because we just can't figure out how to monetize it. We can't figure out how to roll it out. It's going to impact too many other areas of the platform. So we're always looking for ways to bring value, but it's a struggle. I'll be honest with you. I'm digressing from your question here. It's a bit of a struggle as a software development company because you've got our existing clients who want faster, smarter, stronger. And then you've got new prospect clients who are always looking at the competitive landscape, and they're always asking for things you don't have yet.
Right. And why can't you do that thing that Acme software does?
Right. Yeah. But even further to that, we try to look over the horizon and develop things that people aren't even asking for, because we want to have those things that are quite unique. I mean, we've got thumbnail mode, and we've got the ability to switch the language of your interface. And those are things that are very commonplace in other regular generic software programs, where they're quite unique in e-discovery. And so we kind of thought about those things. Automated redaction was something we were working on 3 or 4 years ago before anybody had it. So it's one of those things that it's always that struggle back and forth of, do you optimize for your current client base, or are you really focused on features? And so I'm the idea guy. I'm always pushing dev with new ideas and new ways to kind of reinvent the software. And that's where we are today. So again, to answer your question, I started really in the e-discovery business around '99. Prior to that, I was doing concordance and live note training in the late '90s. iCONECT kicked off in 2000. We've never looked back. And Cindy left. Go ahead.
How did you actually get into legal to begin with?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sure. How did you go from whatever college you went to in advertising into this?
Well, a friend of mine in around '94, I'd been in advertising for years. I'd run my own company in advertising. We got caught in the crossfire of Macintosh computers, which was the first WYSIWYG computer where people could see it themselves on screen, and laser printers. And so we had a business where we were doing things like the top 40 song sheet for the local radio station, and price lists for plumbing companies.
And I'm sorry, this is all in Toronto?
Yeah, correct. And all of a sudden they could do it themselves. They went and bought a Mac and a laser printer. And so, and we saw we started to see a lot of our bread and butter accounts were kind of doing it themselves. And of course, at the time, early Macintosh computers, there was a new Mac coming out like every 3 months, right? And so we were leasing equipment, and 6 months later, it was old archaic equipment, and we needed an upgrade, because now it was color, and then it was, and then PageMaker came out, and Quark Express, and all those other sort of graphic design programs. So it was the time to get out of advertising, and we did, or I did. And a friend of mine had a computer company, and they were doing networks for law firms. And so they were doing Cat5 cabling and Token Ring, which was the other one that was around back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And it was out. Novell 5.1 was out at the time, and we were running networks and doing things for law firms, and that got me into a friend of mine said, hey, there's a big show down in New York, you should go check it out, because there's even more toys in our industry you've never even seen before. So I went to my first legal tech, I think it would have been '95, and I'll actually remember the very first the night I was there. I got there the night before the show, and I didn't really know anybody, so my two brothers came down with me, and we were walking to Carmine's, which is on 50, maybe 48, somewhere around there, around Broadway. And we went by the NBC store, and there was a signed Seinfeld script. But it was expensive. It was like $250, and I didn't have $250. So it was like, do I, don't I? No, I'm not going to do it. Then we talked about it at dinner, and I said, let's go back and buy it. And went back, and the store was closed. And then I was at the show, and then I was back in my car, and I was driving back to Canada. So unfortunately, to this day, my experience of my very first legal tech was, oh yeah, that's the show I didn't buy the signed Seinfeld script. So but no, at legal tech, I kind of wandered around and went, oh, look, a dongle for a photocopier. I know Summation was out then, Concordance was out then, LiveNote was a big player, Case Central had just hit the market. So these were all, I was like a starry-eyed child walking around legal tech. And and again, that's where I met Cindy, and we sort of formed a bond from there. And she eventually joined the company and then left in 2014. But overall, that was my foot in the door. So I became a concordance trainer, became a live note trainer, traveled the world doing that as we were doing networks for law firms. And then in '99, I decided to go out on my own with the relationship with Concordance, and we invented iCONECT, and it went from there.
Cool.
That's cool. So it's funny talking about like going to your first show, and it's almost like going to your first rock concert, right? Not quite the same. I'd still rather go see some live music, but I think it's something that really is eye-opening for a lot of people, and especially back then. How many people were there? Probably were there even 1,000 people at the show? I mean,
you know what? ILTA hadn't started. That was LawNet was the other show that was around at that point. It was in San Francisco, and so LawNet and Legal Tech were one too. I mean, last year would have been the one that got canceled. Would have been my 25th Legal Tech.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And most of it was spent probably standing in that breezeway between the second and third floors.
That's right. Well, the funny story. So the one year they kind of Hilton kind of screwed up the maps a little bit, and we thought we were getting a booth that was right at the top of the stairs where the coffee guy always is, and it turned out that we weren't. We were getting one kind of around the door, and we were like, that's not right. That's not what your map showed. And they kind of agreed. They said, yeah, you're right. And we went, what about this big hallway here? How about we just set up in there instead? And in order to avoid confrontation, they went, sure, just go ahead and do that.
Whatever.
So we were whatever, just go do it. So we did. We set up. Our booth was, I think, only like 5 feet wide, but it was long. It was like 20, 30 feet long. And so we were there for probably 4 or 5 years until evidently the fire marshal came along and said, whoa, wait a minute. If there's a problem, you guys are blocking the breezeway. Get out. So the following year, we were told we could no longer be in the breezeway. But we were in that breezeway probably for 3 or 4 years.
Got it. Now, speaking of conferences, iCONECT actually for a while was running your own user conference as well, right?
Yeah.
How many years did you guys do that?
Oh, I'm going to say 5, maybe 5, and we had some good ones. We put everybody on a cruise boat out of Galveston down to Mexico. That was a fun one. We brought in Lewis Black, the comedian. That was a little off color, but it was great. It was really funny. I can't even tell you his opening joke because it I'm sure half your listeners will hang up. But it was. I remember looking over at Browning Marie and Linda Alele, who was at O'Melveny at the time, and wondering if they were laughing or if they were going to walk out because it was really, really edgy stuff, and they were laughing. I mean, it was fantastic. So, we also had from The Amazing Race, whose name escapes me right now, will come to me, the guy who's the host of The Amazing Race, and we actually did an Amazing Race iCONECT conference in Palm Springs. And it was great. We had a real fun time there, and again, lots of fun, but also lots of education.
And did Mark Tamago come down and run like 400 miles to help with that, or?
No, it was good. But you had to dive to the bottom of the pool and get golf balls and spell a word, and you had to.
Tamago, I don't know if you know Mark. He's at Growlings in Toronto.
Okay.
And he's one of those. He's one of those super. Run. I don't know what they call them, but they don't just do a marathon. They like run through the Gobi Desert, and then they bicycle, from Paris to Moscow. And he competes in those things. He's crazy.
Perfect. Well, we had a rock wall. We had all kinds of fun stuff there, and it was good. I mean, to be frank, what happened though around 2000, I'm going to say 10, 11, as you guys know, the banking crisis hit. A lot of cases got settled. I remember a lot of our vendors just didn't have projects because they were all settling out. Mm-hmm. And we were no different. I mean, the flip side to that was that when the FDIC came along and started doing all the banking investigations, we ended up teaming up with Lockheed Martin and we did that project. So that was in our world the largest project we've ever done. It was there were about 970 banks went bankrupt. 19,000 bank branches that needed to be investigated. And Lockheed had what they called extraction teams, and they would go in, they would fire up the computers, they would extract all the information, they would wipe the hard drives, and they'd hand the keys back to the landlord. And they brought all that data back to Rockville, Maryland, and started dropping it into an iCONECT system. So by the time we were done, there were 44 billion pages of information sitting in iCONECT, 1.6 petabytes, spread across 19,000 databases, and to this probably 450 users. So to this day, I'm not aware of a project that really ever got that big. And
I'm
and
laughing
we ran that
because
for a long time.
I was involved on the defense side. A firm in New Orleans represented a smaller bank down here, which was one of the targets of the investigation. And when it came for production time, they at the meet and confer, they offered us the database, and I said, I want the native files. I want to see the exact files that you copied off of those computers, because I know you did. Long story short, they couldn't find them. The FDIC could not find them. The FBI, of course, who had gone in and seized them and done the mirrors, they had an evidence chain up the wazoo. They could tell you the color suit the guy was wearing who did the mirror of the computer, but they could not find them, and we won. We won right. Basically on a default. We won on penalty kicks, right? They literally could not. There were, like you said, Ian, there were so many. I just had this vision of a Raiders of the Lost Ark warehouse where they had their originals, and they after 6 months they could not produce the original mirror images. And I said to my guy, you should move to dismiss. This is, I mean, it's kind of chicken shit, if you pardon the phrase, but it's a clear violation of the federal rules. And if they don't have the original data, how do they verify that the database they're giving us is accurate? They're using that crazy Canadian company.
I hear you.
I hear you. They're going to give us, it was funny. Like you said, it was so massive. It was almost beyond belief. And I'm sure that somebody. So what happened around that time is that we decided to kind of hold our cards closer to our chest. We didn't do the conference the following year, and then the things kind of changed a little bit. The market kind of changed. Other players started to come in and take market share, and so we took a step back from that. But at the time, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. So I'm curious. Do you see something similar going on now? After a year and a half of COVID and canceled conferences, are people taking and by people I mean vendors in the vendor community, are you taking a second look at doing shows? I wonder how many of these conferences are going to be able to rebound next year. I
don't know. I mean, to be frank, we didn't do ILTA, where our name is in the ring for legal tech, so we'll see where we're at in a few months to make that decision. But I think it's interesting in COVID. The one thing we're finding is that people are very curious. People are very, very open to finding out what else is out there, and I think that's a good thing. They're investigating a lot of new technologies. They're wondering if what they're using currently is the right thing to be using. So from our perspective, we've done more demos of the iCONECT platform in the last year and a half than we've done in the last 5 years. I mean, and maybe it's because people were sitting at home going, hey, I've got an hour to kill.
Now, kind of.
Oh, maybe I'll go watch a demo. So that's really good. And our pipeline is probably 5x what it was in January of 2020.
Wow.
However, with that said, people are risk averse, and people are a little hesitant to be making technology decisions when they're sitting at home, and I think that's been one of the challenges, is that we've found a ton of interest out there in the market, but when it comes to actually signing on the dotted line, people are a little risk averse these days, and I don't know when that changes, but when it does, it's going to be a tsunami, which is really good. But I think we're getting close.
I hope so, because my business is falling off the table. I'm waiting to surf that tsunami, man.
So Ian, let me ask you. Having most of the people who we have, unless they work for a law firm, in our industry tend to jump around a bit and haven't been in a single place for 20 years or so. Having been in the same company, same role, really, I mean, obviously it's grown and you've taken over the dishwashing or whatever you needed to do at any given time. But what have you seen really in terms of things that have truly shifted, that like really changed the way that you think about your business and the way that you think about how e-discovery is run over the course of the 20 years at iCONECT?
Hey, before you answer that, Ian, let me just interrupt. Rocky, are you picking up any of the ambient noise from the trucks outside here? We've got a lot of. Okay.
Nope.
Good.
All good, at least on my end. So.
All right. Sorry, Ian.
Yeah, no worries. I think there's been a shift. I think in the mid 2000s we saw everything go from paper to electronic. Email hit us like a tsunami, and even today, the amount of email, the amount of digital data being produced. I mean, when you read report after report, every one of them has a zero and a new word of a zettabyte or whatever. That it just keeps getting bigger. I think with that said, there are companies who are now having to use your phrase, an oh shit moment, when they go, wait a minute, I've got that stuff from 10 years ago. What do I do with that? Because that's still relevant, and it's either sitting in boxes or it's sitting in electronic or digital format, and they're kind of going, do I keep it forever? Like, what if there's something good in there? Like, then there's regulatory compliance issues, but I think more importantly, people don't know what they don't know, and I think that's the challenge. They look at stuff, and that's anyone from looking at an Iron Mountain and some of the storage companies that they're sitting on boxes and boxes of paper. People who have a cloud where they signed up for a cloud, but it's just kind of I'll call it kind of a dumb cloud. It's just data sitting in a location, and there's no intelligence to it. So we're getting more and more requests. You talk about sort of the change. We're getting more and more requests for people who want to unarchive that data. They want to get rid of the rot, which is the redundant, obsolete, and trivial data, which is in that, so that what they're keeping, what they're paying to keep, either digitally or on shelving, is in fact the stuff that is important. And I think that's an entire process that is going to continue over the course of the next number of years as people look not back to mid 2000s, but back just a little before that and go, if I got anything from the 90s here, and there's some great tools to be able to look at the content within it, to look at the metadata of the content, to look at the box profile, let's say, and make some good pragmatic decisions of what I should keep and what I shouldn't. And I think that's probably the next challenge that's out there, is because let's face it, I mean, I've got boxes of stuff here in my office. I've got CDs that have things on them from the mid 90s. And I'm kind of going, do I throw it out? I guess I should throw it out. But I don't. I'm a bit of a pack rat that way. So and I think that's just me. Go and take some of the larger Fortune 500 companies and look at the kind of challenges they have. And I think there's companies out there are starting to look at that and address that in a very pragmatic way. And that's just the legacy stuff. That doesn't even include the stuff that's being generated every single day, which is being added to the legacy stuff.
Right.
And I think so I think that's a bit of a paradigm shift that started about 2 or 3 years ago, where people kind of had that, oh my goodness moment.
The little bit more of a focus on the data governance side, on the, what do I actually have? And I think part of that, you mentioned there's a lot of good tools out there now that weren't available even 5 years ago.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the analytics tools that maybe were developed for e-discovery initially, or something else, and got their main use in e-discovery. Now all of a sudden people are realizing, hey, I can actually use this to get a better understanding of my data. And yeah, it's a great point in terms of that shift of mindset. I think also it's interesting that we're seeing in that same idea the bringing closer together the e-discovery professionals, which also includes the e-discovery software, with that classic records management, data governance, data management, all of those things coming together, which traditionally was just two separate worlds, weren't talking to each other at all, even though they should have been. So what, from an iCONECT perspective, as you look at it from a business and from software and where you're going to be furthering the development, how do you incorporate some of those shifts and some of those ideas into the platform?
Well, privacy is a big part of it. Identifying what to keep. It might be keep anything that has a credit card number on it, keep anything that has a passport ID number on it, keep anything that contains any one of these, 22 drug names. We've got tech to do that. I mean, we've gone and adopted the AFI technology out of Norway right within the platform, and we do some cool stuff with it. I mean, beyond email threading and near dupe and some of the other things that are out there, we're actually using that technology as the foundation for our automated redaction tool. And then we built the automated redaction tool, which is called Cover. And then we went, wait a minute, if we can find it, we can actually extract it. So then we wrote an extraction layer. So not only can I go in and find all the documents that have Visa card numbers in them, I can actually extract a listing of the Visa card numbers. And then went, wait a minute, we can now use that for breach detection, where we can now go through a corpus of data and look for any one of these 22 hot buttons that we're looking for and normalize all the data back to all the various custodians and be able to deliver a report out the back end. So I think that there's an ongoing use of the AI. The other thing that we did about probably 4 or 5 years ago is we developed a way for people to create, I'll call it a fake document, a synthetic document. And so, for example, you don't really know. You go to an attorney and say, "Well, give me 10 words you want us to search for." Well, that's a question. But if we went to an attorney and said, "Hey, create for me a smoking gun document. Create it from scratch. Pretend you know what you know, and if there was a document that said that would be really cool." And so we created that. It's called Exemplar. And we did the BP oil spill case. We're on the plaintiff side of that. One of our vendors did that in Omaha. And they had 11 issues they were looking for. It was about 14 pages of information. And they created 11 fake documents. And then they literally threw them at the collection and said, find similar. And all of a sudden, they got back the 300 documents that were probably the ones they should be focused on. So I think the use of AI, the creative use of AI, the ability to be on a document like you're on Amazon and go, hey, people who looked at this also bought these things. Well, imagine you're navigating and you see a document, go, hey, people who read this document might also be interested in these 5 documents. Right. And so we're building out that UI. And I think the user interface, the UI, is really key. And that's kind of my special sauce that I bring to the table, is the ability to be able to take what's extremely complex technology. I mean, Rachi, from your history in companies gone by, I mean, it's really thick stuff. However, you cannot present that to a law clerk or a paralegal or an attorney. They want the easy button. They want the hey, I'm going to type. Yeah. I'm going to type. I'm going to type. Yeah. I'm going to type that in. I'm going to click a button. Stuff happens, and I get the 9 documents I'm looking for. And that's really what we're trying to create with the AI. And I think the more and more you see iCONECT continue to evolve, the more and more you're going to see that. And we're doing that with AFI. We have another technology called Sentio, which is really cool stuff. It actually, imagine, if you will, you've got a whole bunch of manual reviewers, and this is like Big Brother looking over their shoulder electronically and going, what do you mean Yankee season tickets are a highly confidential document? I'm going to put a red X. I'm going to put a red X on that one. And at the end of the day, all the red X documents get sent to a supervisor to say, hey, we're not sure these ones are accurate. You might want to just double check. And that's extremely powerful stuff, right? So now you've got oversight of a manual review team, which isn't really AI. So from the classic TAR that you have to go get approval from someone or the other side, this is the use of AI within your own coding shop that just allows you to make sure you're delivering solid results. Yeah. So I think we're really dipping our toe in the AI area, and I think, but the key is there's lots of good tech out there, but it's all a matter of how can you present it to the user in such a way that they can consume it without knowing they're consuming it. Yeah. And that's what we're working on.
Yeah, that exemplar feature is something that Browning really liked. But I want to focus real quick, if I can. Excuse me, Rachi. You mentioned security. So how difficult is it for you as a software developer? You've got European security requirements, privacy and security, right, with the GDPR. Now the United States has 4 states and probably another half a dozen in the hopper that are going to have that do have their own security requirements. Right. I don't know what the situation is in Canada, if you have similar statutes up there, but how difficult is that with different standards, statutes, regulations in different jurisdictions to be able to keep on top of that?
Yeah, you know what? It's to be frank, it's easy because we've gone and built some of the tools that we built to be extremely flexible. So if I'm doing a DSAR and I've got Romanian information, I literally click the link that says look for Romanian PII. So we can manage PII from 51 countries. And now that we've gone and written the redaction layer and the search layer and the reporting layer and the extraction layer, we're not that fussed about it. We actually did a demo for a client recently for a DSAR, and they had this massive, it was like a 35 tab spreadsheet. And they were like, well, can it redact information from this spreadsheet? This is a beast of a spreadsheet. And so we went, okay, let's try it. And we did. We tested it, and we were looking for people's names and job titles. That was the two things we were looking for in it. And Olivia, who was running it internally, it finished in like 5 seconds, and she went, I guess we didn't find much. Right? Because it happened so fast. And then we looked at the file. We had found like 1,100 artifacts in this thing across all 30 tabs in under 5 seconds. So I think, there's some cool tech out there, and we're continuing to make it faster, smarter, stronger. And whether it's CCPA, DSAR, GDPR, whatever's coming at us, I think our dev team has always been extremely flexible, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because you have to be flexible, but you can't overwhelm people with options. You can't go to Toys R Us and buy a bag of Lego, because nobody would know what to build with it. You go to Toys R Us and you buy a starfighter or a castle or whatever, and it's with instructions on what to do with the Lego. And that's what we've really tried to focus on. iCONECT is a bit of a bag of Lego, but because we templatize everything and sort of show you how to create your own custom workflows with all this Lego, it's been really, really advantageous, because now we don't go into a client and go, throw away the way you're doing it now in Ringtail or Relativity or iPro and Catalyst, whatever it is, and do it the iCONECT way. We go, oh, is that your workflow? Great. Let's show you how you can replicate that in the iCONECT platform. And that's given us a really strong position in talking to people about moving their technology forward.
And does Canada have its own GDPR type?
Yeah, it's coming, but it's not heavily regulated.
Will it be national or provincial, do you think?
I think it'll be national. But maybe not Quebec. They kind of do their own thing, and it does cause some language complications. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, down here we call that Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama.
Got it.
The South.
But the one thing that I've always noticed about iCONECT is, and it probably comes from your background, pre-legal, is the fact that it's always had a great UI. It's always focused on seamless. All of the pieces seem to work together.
I hope Monica Bay isn't listening to this. You know her reaction, Ian, to the word seamless. Her head explodes.
That's right.
Yeah. But really, I mean, it's the simplification of these complex tools that allows attorneys and even non-attorneys, even sometimes the technical people, to be able to make use of it in a way that actually works for them.
Yeah,
and that's something that a lot of people miss.
Yeah, it's the old 80-20 rule. 80% of the people only need this small feature set.
Yeah.
Let's make that right there and whack the rest of it into an advanced button. And we find that therefore people can get in and do their work. 80% of the people can do their work. And for that 20% who want to get out the wrenches and pliers and screwdrivers and really start to play with it, they can open up that advanced panel and they can have levers and toggles all day long. It's no different than your smartphone. You go into that gear icon, you go two levels deep. There's a lot of options in there. But I'd say 90% of the people never click on the gear icon, other than they just don't. And I think so we've kind of adopted that. But to be frank, I think one of the challenges in our business right now is a level of expectation. because people understand in their smartphone, they're very, very comfortable. Download an app, start using it. Nobody downloads an app and spends a week in a training class.
Right.
You know, in fact, you'd be hard pressed for them to download an app and watch more than a 2-minute video. So even from that perspective, Olivia Kane, who runs our technical services department, you know, we've gone and taken what used to be an hour-long training curriculum, and now it's a whole series of little 2-minute snippets that you can easily get to.
Very smart.
Because that's what you need. That's what you need to know right now. And I think that's trying to address that level of expectation where it should be easy. If it's not easy, I'm on to something else. Because we all have that on the internet. I mean, we used to be quite comfortable with pictures, you know, loading like this. And now if it doesn't show up in sub 3 seconds, I'm out.
Oh,
my internet's broke.
Why are you waiting so long?
Like even sub-second. If it doesn't work in sub-second, I'm phoning Jim from tech support because something's wrong. You know, and so I think that level of expectation it's a big burden for tech companies because you have to operate at that level, and you know, it forces us to bring up our game. We actually launched our version 10 of iCONECT, and our version 11 is coming in the new year. Nobody knows that yet, but you can tell that. And our new version is based on Elasticsearch. And we're doing that mainly because we have found that some of the technologies that we had adopted in 2013, 14, just aren't optimized for some of the HTML feeds and speeds that are out there now. So we're always upgrading. Of course, browsers are changing. It seems like I'm getting a Google update or an Edge update every 3 weeks. And, you know, and our testing people they go crazy for that. You know, it's like, oh, now we got to test it on another version, which is fine. I mean, we've got a very strong QA department, and everything gets tested before it goes out. But those are some of the challenges as a software developer of trying to keep up with this peripheral technology that, don't be wrong, we need it in order to work. We need tablets and we need browsers, and but it's challenging. It's challenging because they're always leapfrogging us, and we have to keep up.
So, Tom, I think unfortunately we have come to that point in time where you're going to have to take us out with a question or two.
All right. Well, I have 2 questions, Ian. Well, actually, I have 3. Real quick. Real quick. You mentioned your passion for football. You're a budding screenplay writer, right?
Yes, I am. Although I haven't done it as much as I used to when I was in hotel rooms and airports all the time. Because now instead of having 2 hours of downtime in my hotel room, I got 2 hours and go, I better go cut the grass. But yeah, no, I got into that. I was an executive producer on a movie called Gridlocked. It's actually available on Netflix if you want to watch it. It's got Danny Glover and Dominic Purcell and Stephen Lang, who's the bad guy in Avatar. So it's called Gridlocked. It's on Netflix. You can go rent it now. And but I was an executive producer on that movie, and it I kind of caught the bug a little bit, and really enjoyed it. Went to the red carpet event in Austin, Texas, and there was always this. I've always enjoyed writing, and so I started writing, and I taught myself how to write screenplays, and I realized I'm pretty good at it. And I think because of what we do, reading contracts all the time, you got something on page 1 that has to tie into something on page 17 that has to tie into something on page 23, and that's how movies work. You have to have these sort of arcs that are sort of interconnecting. And so yeah, I've written one based on Pink Floyd's Making of Dark Side of the Moon in 1973, and I've been working with various agencies and band members on that one. We'll see how far that goes. I've written one based on a Douglas Copeland novel called Miss Wyoming, which is kind of a cool one. We'll see where that one goes. And then the one I just recently completed is based on a soccer team from Edinburgh, Scotland, from 1895 called St. Bernard's. Cool. And it's actually called When the Saints, like the song. So it's and there's this great crescendo at the end where they start singing the When the Saints song in the background as sort of as part of the finale. So it's it's a real fun one. And it's something I really enjoy.
You say When the Saints, are you talking about the Saints go marching in?
Absolutely.
Oh, well, our national anthem down here in New Orleans.
You just hit Tom's sweet spot.
So my next question is, this is the blind question that we go to people. You mentioned earlier being a concordance trainer. And back in those days, I knew you as a concordance trainer, but I was a summation guy.
Got it.
We never worked together. We would see each other places, but we were always on opposite side of the fence. Right. So in that vein, Beatles or Stones?
Oh, Beatles, 100%.
Oh my God. And
Yes.
This interview is over.
Tom, you realize that we've been beating you 20-1 here, right?
Yes, I do realize that. Thank you very much. Thank you for reminding me.
Just put that out there.
And I did enjoy that movie that came out. It was called Yesterday. It came out about a year and a half
ago.
ago.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
And I really enjoyed that. I've never been a huge Stones fan. I just never really. But I was also listening to Depeche Mode and Flock of Seagulls when other people were listening to Bruce Springsteen, and So,
I think I just spit up in my mouth a little bit. I'm sorry. Charlie Watts just rolled over his grave.
Gain favor by saying when the Saints go marching in, and you just lost it all. That's it.
Yeah,
there you go.
Exactly.
There you
so
go.
The last question, the question we ask everybody: if you could spend a day with somebody from our profession, it can be someone who's living or dead, someone you'd really enjoy spending time with, who would that person be, and what would you do? It doesn't have to be work related. You don't have to be working on a project. You could be going to a Tottenham match like you did with Graham. You could be, fishing. You could be working on a screenplay. Who would you do it with, and what would you do?
It's a great question. I'm going to throw Browning Marine in the ring on this one. No longer with us, but I found every time I spoke to him, spent time with him, he listened. There's a lot of people in this industry are very happy to tell you their thoughts and ideas. And as you're talking to them, you can tell that they're not really listening. They're thinking about what they want to tell you next. And I always found with Browning, I remember meeting with him in London, England, when he was over there a couple of times. And we just sat down. We actually went for a walk down beside the London Wall, and it was great. I mean, we literally just talked about the industry, where it was going, where it had been. I'd love to resurrect that conversation again. And I think but I think the biggest skill that he had was he was very, very open to what's next, and he was not stuck in a workflow that he was trying to jam everything into. He was all about where can the workflow go from here? How can I continue to improve it? And I think that constant improvement really came with him listening to what was out there. And at the time, we were young as a company. We had a lot to say, and he was a big advocate of what we were doing. And I think I'll always remember that.
Yeah, great guy. I miss him terribly. Same experience. And not just about our profession. He could. He would equally well talk about, he and I hit it off because we were both fans of a comedy duo from New England, where we were both from the Boston area, called Bob and Ray. And he would we would both be in tears recounting different bits that they did. We could go for hours just talking about other subjects. So he was just but you're right. The ability to listen, a skill that people could use, not just in our profession, but in life in general, but listen to what the other person is saying.
That's right.
I like your line. He wasn't prepping for what he was going to say next. He was paying attention to what you were saying. So, yeah. Well, Ian, thanks so much for your time. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I miss, neither one of us ended up at ILTACON this year. And that's typically ILTACON and Legal Tech are the two places I get to see you in person.
Yeah.
Hopefully, New York in the next year. Although I'm skeptical about my appearance.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how things go.
See.
But, if not there, someplace down the road.
That sounds great.
I always enjoy talking with you and your insights, and
appreciate
and
Rocky told me that if I said the word karaoke, the interview was over. So with that, I will tell you that that Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me by Elton John is my go-to, but it's the George Michael version. So
good.
There you go.
Although you would have had a kindred spirit in Gail, who never saw a karaoke bar she couldn't go into. And enjoy. She loved to sing. She had been a singer as a young girl, and several people in her family were. She had a pretty good voice. Although a funny thing, the ILTA that was in Nashville a number of years ago, we went down to whatever the main drag was. And she said, "Oh, we got to go to a karaoke bar." I'm going, "All right, honey, that's great." And so we went in, and she sat there, and I could see her shrinking in her seat as like the first 3 singers who got up on the stage could have won American Idol, right? Wow. You know, and then we realized, oh, it's Nashville. These are all people who've come here, and they're working as waiters or cab drivers or whatever, but they've all got great voices.
Something. Yeah.
And she said, well, I'm not getting up on that stage.
I'm sure she could have held her own.
Well, she revamped. We came back the next night, and she said, to hell with it. I'm going up on the
Perfect.
Tom, one day I will tell you the story of how Ian made me get up and sing. I'm not say which song, but a certain song that was a Moulin Rouge version of the song. If you go through the soundtrack, you can probably figure out which one it is. And it was
my God.
Experiences of my life. It was
it was done in the voice of William Shatner. It was it was epic.
Yes,
nice.
Epic.
I milked it for all it was worth. But anyway, Ian, thank you. I think now it is time for the interview to be over. But
perfect.
Sorry, not interview, the chat. No, but really, again, thank you for joining. It's always great to have you here.
Good stuff.
Yep.
You guys stay safe. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
We'll see all you folks next time on the eDiscovery channel.